transparent or transcendent, expanding out beyond this room. The window is wide open, and the wind is blowing through. The wind is blowing through. The window is wide open, and the wind is blowing through. Ooh, ooh, ah.
So my name is Freddie Johnson, and probably I think around 20 some years ago when I started doing I was in my 40s then, and I was doing my end-of-life planning, like a will and that sort of thing. I came across a question there of what choice of disposition would you like, and I have to check one, and you can guess what those two choices are. One was cremation and the other was burial. Well, even at that time, I knew that I didn't want burial because I know what it involved in terms of the pocketbook. I also knew what it involved in terms of caskets and embalming and a lot of cement and plastic. What I chose at that time was cremation, and the reason I chose it was not because I wanted cremation. It was because it's what I didn't want, and those were the only two choices there. So fast forward about, I don't know, 10 years or 15 years after that, a friend of mine who had recently visited one of two what he called conservation burial grounds. And he explained that to me, and I was totally captivated with the idea because, of course, what I really wanted was a natural burial. I got excited, and he and I went to a friend of mine who was at the time the executive director of Alachua Conservation Trust. I had known my friend Hutch for many years, so once we started talking, I was really surprised to hear that Hutch too had just recently heard about this design or concept of conservation burial. What my friend and I proposed to Hutch is that we form a nonprofit group, pull together a board, and for Alachua Conservation Trust and our new nonprofit organization to create a conservation cemetery, work together to make that happen for our county, which is Alachua County. We basically found land that Alachua Conservation Trust had just recently, or at least part of it, had just recently saved. In other words, they had placed it under, they rallied and got enough money to buy it and keep it from developing it. Part of that land, at the time 78 acres of that land, would be a great place for a conservation cemetery. And so what Hutch did was propose to save taxpayer money and for them just to buy the conservation easement from Alachua Conservation Trust, and then the conservation burial ground could be a third partner in managing burials and forever protecting the land under the easement of Alachua County as a conservation burial ground. And that's what happened. We presented the program to the county commissioners, and we step by step visited the neighborhood and had meetings. We explained to everyone all the benefits of natural burial and conserving the land forever. And that we actually for 3 years met monthly as a board. Our organization is called Conservation Burial Inc., but we just go by Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery. But as it happened, one of our dear friends, who also a doctor, local doctor named Dr. Kathy Cantwell, a very good and active environmentalist as well in the community, she came to us explaining that she'd been diagnosed with a brain tumor and that she only had a couple months to live, and that she wanted to be the first person buried in Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery. With that news, we decided that we had planned and researched enough, and we took the step of asking the state and applying for a license as a nonprofit cemetery. within 30 days or so, Dr. Kathy Cantwell selected her site, and she was buried as the first person buried at Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery. All of her friends and family had a home funeral for her. There was no funeral home involved. There was an incredible team. They took her body from hospice to her home, laid her body out on the dining room table along with their cat, and had a ceremony, then immediately came to Prairie Creek and with a donkey and a cart in a shroud that all of her friends made out of environmental t-shirts. And a procession went from this lodge that we're in right now, a half a mile, to the gravesite that she had selected in Prairie Creek, and that is where she is buried today. So we're on an area of the Kathy Cantwell Trail right now, and often also called the Blue Trail. The Blue Trail runs through Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery and then extends to other trails. The acreage here at Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery is 93 acres, and that's a part of about 600 acres for all of Prairie Creek Preserve. So it's quite a beautiful and wild area when you think of the 20,000+ acres of Paynes Prairie State Park being contiguous with this 600+ acres. The Blue Trail also connects up with trails that connect with the Hawthorne-Gainesville Trail, which is a paved rails to trails pathway for bikers, but also hikers and runners and walkers, that goes from Hawthorne, Florida to Gainesville, which is about a 20-mile paved trail. All of this is a part of what is all about the concept of conservation burial, whereby you take space like this, and as you can see, it doesn't look like a cemetery in a conventional sense, but it is this balance between nature and sacred burial grounds. And as long as you're doing burials in a natural way and your density is appropriately honoring nature and in harmony with nature, then it actually makes for a very, very healthy and beautiful place. And those people that choose this are actually creating this wonderful legacy, because this land, by conservation easement, is in perpetuity protected, and it is something that is constantly cleaning air, cleaning water, thereby choices like this and changing our paradigm on how we make choices for body disposition plays directly into the modern day challenges that we have in terms of global warming and climate change.
I wasn't asking for redemption or even searching for a sign. I was quietly observing when stillness fell upon my mind. Stillness fell upon my mind. I was quietly observing when stillness fell upon my mind. Maybe this is heaven, and I'm only passing through, where the latitudes of reason meet the longitudes of truth. The longitudes of truth, where the latitudes of reason meet the longitudes of truth. This is all that I remember, and all I'm going to. The window is wide open, and my heart is open too. My heart's open to you. The window is wide open, and my heart's open to you.
I guess, have to thank her for us opening when we did because of her insistence of being the first person buried here.